Hello, everyone. I hope you're having an excellent day so far. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel and watching another review rant, whatever you want to call these, about a recent movie that I've seen. So, last night I went to see Killers of the Flower Moon. I have been so thirsty to see this movie since the first time I saw a preview. My husband is a very, very thoughtful man sometimes when it comes to certain things, and he shows me movie trailers all the time of stuff that he thinks I would like, because I am a sucker for a period film, a war movie, anything with great costuming. So when he comes across something like that, he puts it on my radar, he shows me the trailer, and he kind of asked me, like, do I want to go see it? So as soon as these trailers dropped, I seen it, and I've been thirsty to go out to the movies. I thought it was going to be on streaming because Apple Plus, but that hasn't happened yet. So, yeah, last night we went to the movies. This movie is long as hell. I'm not going to lie to you. It's almost 4 hours. It's like 3.5 hours runtime. With the previews and stuff, let's just call it 4 hours and change. But getting into the story, you understand why it takes so long to tell it. And Martin Scorsese actually does an excellent job, like, being as thorough as he could without boring people to death or without, like, having it too spaced out. He really, to me, he did an excellent job of, like, summarizing the story but still providing depth on some of the characters, but, like, not the unnecessary depth that you get sometimes in certain movies where you get to a storyline and it's like, well, why did they tell us that? It doesn't go with anything. Like, the main characters are essentially this family of sisters. This man, William Hale, who is known, or to me, who calls himself a friend of the Osage, and then everybody essentially that is connected to him. Those are like the two bodies of, people that matter in this movie. So, William Hale, a little pointless backstory on him. They didn't really give it in the movie, but I did research, like, leading up to this movie because I was super interested in the story. And the story is based on a book, Killers of the Flower Moon, about the Osage murders. So this man, William Hale, like a lot of, early Americans, he's living in this Indian territory, and he, like, used his industriousness and basically his whiteness to bring things into the town, like bringing them into the 20th century, as he called it. But to me, it really wasn't with none of his money. It was more so he was like the mouthpiece and the connector to get things done for them that was, like, easily done in other towns for white people, but just, nobody was trying to help the Indians out. So, as you know, if you know any type of American history, you know that we came, we saw, we conquered. We kicked the Indians out of, their freeness and just inhabiting land based on what they were doing traditionally, and gave them reservations of what we probably deemed at the time the most useless, like, out of the way land that we couldn't really have a vision for at that time. But as fate would have it, the Osage land ends up having oil on it, black gold as they were calling it. So it turned into a boom town. And there were a whole bunch of boom towns, like, throughout the South, Oklahoma, what have you. And it's oil money time. So just like the gold rush, people are coming and people have to work to, like, refine that oil, get that oil out of the ground, all of that. But the natives who own the land now are the wealthy class, like the 1%ers, essentially. They're running around. They're buying furs. They're buying cars. They said that they were, like, the richest people in the country per capita. They had this many cars per capita, all this stuff, like. And what really hurt them, too, was the sensationalism of it all, like, because there was no social media and stuff like that, right? So if newspapers and sort of media outlets of that time would have just not publicized it in a way and sensationalized it, it probably would have been a little bit better, because only the people there and around would have known about it. So then they're kind of the only people that could take advantage, and the word would have spread like that eventually. But not so much so where it's, like, kind of blasted to everybody, and then you have all of these, I don't want to say useless because that has a negative connotation to it, but all of these white men that are coming to the area in the town knowing that it's, like, gushing out money, and they don't really have any intention of working, because to them, and they have a unique way of showing this in the movie without being outwardly racist or disrespectful or using, like, foul language, which I really appreciate, because I feel like in the past, and especially when these types of stories are told about black people, they kind of go out of their way to get their N-words off and to get their disrespect off, but they didn't really do that in this movie too much. And they were just kind of showing it like, just based on their mannerism and their actions and how they speak to each other, and like their it's so insidious that it's hard to even put a name on it. But they're like old boys code, like they're fellow white man code. Like you see when Ernest Burkhart, one of William Hill's nephews, gets to the town, it's like, oh, he don't really know nobody. He don't really have no references. He don't have no work experience. He just got out of war, essentially. And as soon as he gets to the town, he sees another guy um, that he was on the front with. And, like, they have that bond or whatever. And they hug and all of this. And, like, they're on equal footing with each other. But they're viewing all the natives, the Indians, like they're not really people for real and they don't deserve. And it's like, well, you see all these Indians, it's in the Bible that you got to work to live, slave trade rhetoric. And when the last time you seen one of these Indians working? Like, bruh, you came to their country from your famine out, war torn debacle in Europe, wherever you were at, over here because America was seen as like the land of opportunity, the land of milk and honey, but these people were already here. So you feel like you should get to come to the promised land and they shouldn't be benefiting because they're beneath you in some way. When they were over here living better than you, clearly, because they wasn't starving, having to get on boats, ships, whatever they could to go to your country and find something to eat and find a better way. You had to do that. So how they deem these people as savages is very interesting to me. Very interesting. But that's another rant for another day. So anyways, they're not really viewing these Indians as people. And they're not saying it outright, but you can kind of tell. Even in one of the scenes in the movie where Ernest has sort of got that battery in his back from his uncle William Hill, and they start the organized killings to get the head rights, that they're calling it, basically the ownership of this land that has oil on it. And he's like, oh yeah, he's like soliciting a hitman, with the instruction of his uncle. And the guy's like, oh yeah, sure, I'm outlaw that, but I'm not trying to lay nobody down. He's like, oh, but it's Indian. He's like, well, that's different. Sir, please tell me how that's different. Please. I really want to understand. So this Mr. William Hill, for me, he's a scammer. And it's like some of the white people are noticing that he's a scammer, but maybe the natives, because they're not speaking English, they're speaking their own language, with English peppered in. They're not outright calling him a scammer. But one of the interesting scenes in the movie, and I'm not trying to tell the whole entire movie because I want y'all to see it on your own, and maybe we could talk about it in the comments. But one of the more interesting scenes, he pulled up on this guy that was in collusion with him on one of his plots, one of his murder plots. And he's like, oh yeah, so-and-so is out. The police is looking at the investigation. Woo, woo. You should probably get out of town. And he's like, I'm fine where I'm at. And you not my friend. So get away from me. And the shock on Robert De Niro is playing William Hill on his face, and just the disgust that people weren't just going to blanket take his word and like follow his orders. He was kind of pissed off by that. Like, ugh. So to get to the like crux of the story, people start dying. Again, I'm not going to give you too much specifics because I want you to see the movie. If you're interested in seeing the movie, then we can discuss it in the comments. People start dying. And it's all very suspicious circumstances. Like the way people are found, the situations, how they've been killed. Very, if First 48, if Law and Order was out there, a lot of people would be in jail. Because the crimes, they were not executed well. There was no plan. It was clearly money was the root of these crimes. And it just seemed like they were in that time because in this movie, the timeline seemed to run with the Tulsa massacre. So it was like white people in Oklahoma was just on some, no, these others are not about to get more than us, have more than us. And sure, this is an American dream, but it was for them. It was almost as if, and you can never, like hindsight is always better than what's going on in the moment. But it's almost like these white people could not stand the idea that somebody else that they viewed as lesser, that maybe other white people had told them were less than, were doing better than them in America. Like, how dare these black people? We moved them to this side of town and we barely let them free from slavery. And they're going to build banks and churches and live better than us and have better clothes than us. Hell no, let's burn it down. Let's blow it up. So the natives, essentially across town in Oklahoma, when one of their houses blows up, Molly wakes up like, oh no, it's just like Tulsa, like they're coming for us. So the white people was on a rampage. And it's always the domestic terrorism for me. Y'all radicalize these white people, poor whites, with your rhetoric and your racism and your xenophobia and all of those things. And you put a battery in their back to go out and act like vigilantes when they see somebody that they have heard should be less than them, that's worth less than them, that's just not even, never will be up to their standard. They're not even a person. They're subhuman. They're rats. They're vagrants. They're whatever. They're slaves. And now when they have the ingenuity and the brain power to figure out a situation and make some money and eke out a life for themselves, the white people just come set it on fire, come burn it up, come steal it. So that's the thing. American history is so sad when you peel back, the flag and the Statue of Liberty. It's just murders on murders on murders. So this man, William Hill, who's supposed to be a friend to the Osage, is really in their business, because back in those times, as soon as the Indians started getting that money, they basically put laws in place that said, oh, they're not competent. They're not smart enough to manage their own funds, so they need these executors. Like, in today's time, it would be similar to being in a conservatorship. Google conservatorship, if you don't know what that is. Like Britney Spears was in, So all these grown Native American people that's been running their own business, running their family, goddamn, planting, doing what they need to do to survive. Now they're not good enough to manage their own money. They're not smart enough. And who are the executors? Random white men. So these people are overseeing their money, and they got to go to them for everything. Just like you do with a conservatorship. Oh, I want to buy lip gloss. Oh, I want to get a pretty dress. Oh, I have to pay a hospital expense. And they're like, yeah, and now all of those decisions. It was so deep. Even down to one of Molly's sisters passed away, and she was paying funeral expenses. And her husband, Ernest, who's played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is also William Hill's nephew. And if you watch the movie, you'll get how shady that whole thing came about and how that was. He's like, are you trying to charge me Osage prices? This funeral is $1,600. This casket is $1,600. This is that much. This is blah, blah, blah. So-and-so, he gave a white man's name, had a funeral down here last week, and it wasn't more than $300. You trying to charge me Osage prices? You trying to charge me Osage prices? And the guy, the funeral home man, kind of gets up in arms with him. And he was like, it's not your money. And have you seen, I work for my money. And have you seen, when's the last time you seen one of these Indians working? And it's like everybody felt that they could just take advantage of them. They could rob them because that's what they were put here to do. They were supposed to be living better, not them. Even the car salesman, they had a scene where a wealthy Indian man and his wife are buying a new vehicle, and the guy's like, if anything happens to it, oil goes bad, that, you just come on right back for a brand new one. Like, the grift was on 100,000. These people couldn't go anywhere without getting scammed, getting played. And what was crazier was that this man who was billing himself as a friend to the Osage, this friendly white man, he is really in on every fix, every scam. Like, he has insurance policies put out on people. He is orchestrating marriages and stuff, and making sure all these Indian ladies are married to these white men. So when they die and their children die, they can get the head rights to the land. And it's like, y'all know I'm a nurse, so I had to skip ahead. When I was doing the research ahead of this movie, and the saddest thing about it is that oil is a finite resource. That's why they're trying to do their damnedest to switch us here in America now to EV vehicles and battery-powered vehicles, so we can stop being dependent on oil and all these things because of war and different situations, and just that it is it's not, we're going to run out of oil. Everybody can't just be running off of it. So this town, all these murders happen. Families destroyed, just scam on scam, and eventually the oil runs out. And it's not a boom town anymore. And y'all done kill all these Osage people. Like, it just, I don't want to say I was shocked, because it's pretty much just American history on repeat. The story, it happens over and over, just to a different group of people or in a different area. But the fact that y'all were so just jealous and hating that these natives were living better than you, that you would go and kill and steal and harm people. And the money ran out. The oil ran out. So now the town is gone. People go to jail. That, to me, they don't get their just due. There should have been, especially back then, there was capital punishment. I feel like they did not execute that on the level that they would have if some white people were killed. Like, y'all read To Kill a Mockingbird. Something happened to somebody white, they're ready to chop heads. But with these Native Americans, it was like they had to pay $20,000. And back then, that's a lot of money. An extreme amount of money. Like, Google the inflation rate for this time period. Paying $20,000 to send somebody to the Capitol to ask the president for help. And eventually they do get an FBI agent down, and that's who really just gets them a modicum of justice. But just all the stuff they had to go through, Molly getting poisoned and then not wanting to believe it, just, oh, this movie was so upsetting. And I saw it so late at night. I saw it at 7. I got out at like close to 11 o'clock and just, I feel like it gave me such a nasty mood for the evening. But ladies, always stay dangerous, okay? Never trust these men, I promise you. I hate to be the one to say I'm married and I still keep a weather eye on the horizon because you never know what these people are doing. Oh my God. Self-love is the best love. Check out Killers of the Flower Moon. Leonardo DiCaprio. Lily Gladstone did an incredible job playing Molly Burkhart. Robert De Niro always smokes at any screen he's on. Martin Scorsese, incredible job putting this movie together. The only thing that I would say that I don't like, but it's just the theme, and what can he do because he is a white man of a certain age as well, is that you center those people in your stories. This should not have been centered around William Hale and Leonardo DiCaprio playing Ernest Burkhart and all the other white men that you kind of are trying to seek pity for, I guess, in a way, at least the way that you're displaying them in the end when they start snitching on each other and all of that. It's like this should have been told from the Indian perspective. How did Molly feel about all of this? Because still, even though she's the person that's being most hurt in this movie, she's kind of like a passive character in a way. And y'all can let me know if you've seen it, what you think in the comments. But I just really didn't like the way that it was put from the white male perspective when this is a Native American story. Like, this whole thing should be from Molly's point of view. Let me know what you guys think about the movie in the comments. Please don't forget to subscribe.